So I gotta be honest, this week's episode of Goblin Slayer Season 2, we're at episode 9 now, probably is one of the closest to feeling like Season 1 for me in terms of the action. Now, I've been someone who's enjoyed Season 2. There's been a lot more harsh voices than myself. There's been aspects I said last week was one of the weakest episodes of Goblin Slayer, but I still had fun, right? But there's this element about this specific fight, and I'm talking about this sea serpent fight, that feels completely reminiscent to the exact same excitement I had for some of the best fights within Season 1. And I'm thinking of the fights like, in Season 1 there's this moment where Goblin Slayer got some flour, and I'm like, why the hell does he need flour? And he's going up against a giant eyeball and he uses it as like a big explosion. Those are the types of things that are just like really cool to me, because thinking outside the box, making this feel like a proper D&D campaign, and just watching Goblin Slayer be strategic rather than the meathead that a lot of people, I guess, kind of presented him as when talking about the show when it initially came out, when in actuality, he's an incredibly skilled and talented fighter who thinks outside the box and feels like he uses everything to his full potential. We're in the middle of sea. We have this giant serpent that's lashing out at us. We're trying to fire arrows, they're bouncing right off. Yeah, we're getting in some nice neck throws with the spears, but at the same time, it just felt like, it's so cool seeing the characters pushed outside their comfort zone, which is kind of like one of the reasons I like the wedding so much as an idea, because we're in this big forest. We got big dinosaurs walking around, we got goblins yeehawing their way through, riding them like they're cowboys, and the idea of just being out and seeing this way, it just was really cool. I think this is the biggest thing that has made Season 2, even when I don't think it's necessarily as good as Season 1, still stick out, is they're pushing these characters outside their comfort zone. They're not just in caves, they're not just in the open fields. They're on rafts, they're on boats, and honestly, watching that fight, as short as it was very memorable, well produced, and it was really cool to see how they got that W. Now, I do have a full live reaction to this week's Goblin Slayer episode over on my Patreon, so if you would like to see that, head on over there, and it is available. So we actually had quite a bit of action this episode. We kick off with, I guess, what is a flashback, and I remember when initially the opening, when we first got to see Season 2's opening, I was like, oh, the person who looks like he's in the samurai, I guess, is Goblin Slayer, and now at this point, I don't know what the hell we just witnessed there, but it's very interesting for sure. But I like the idea that we kick off with this really cool fight, which honestly, like, some of the designs I was looking at, I'm like, damn, this looks like a demon lord. Like, you could have this be the final boss in any anime, and I'm not going to be complaining. Very cool aesthetic. I like the kind of like old school filter, almost like we're watching an old film that's one step away from bursting into flames and we'll never get to repeat it. We of course had the serpent fight, which honestly at first I thought they killed it quite easily, and then it came back up for round 2. And then we had the goblin ambush at the very end of the episode. But the fact that they also managed to have a good downtime, we have the archbishop with us, we have some slice of life, and then we enter in the city. And honestly, somehow an episode that I think should feel rushed or like too much happened, because just thinking and explaining out loud everything that we had in this episode, that feels like 2 episodes worth of content crammed into one. But it honestly worked. I would probably argue this being one of, if not the best episodes that I've seen of this season of Goblin Slayer so far. And like I said, I think the serpent fight is one of my personal favorite fights that I've seen in Goblin Slayer, period. I just really clicked with that. And I'm always a sucker for when like you're going into like a new city and there's like, some guards kind of shaking you down. Not that they're dicks by any means. I mean, look at the lineup. Like, this is just the initial lineup we saw. There's bound to be like hundreds, if not thousands, that they have to either turn away or say, you know what, you don't got the proper identifications. Gotta be a stressful job, especially when you're trying to keep the kingdom safe. And then in comes this man who looks like he's bronze rank at best, because we have to remember, Goblin Slayer being silver rank is something that probably isn't believed that easily, because he looks like he only fights lower class monsters, which kind of is what he does, but we also know how talented he is. But his armor and his weaponry is literally, he's explained it in the Season 1, like near the beginning, that he wears and he uses certain things because it's the best for fighting goblins. You show him a silver rank badge, yeah, most people aren't going to believe that. And it's a good thing we had our lady with us, because otherwise, I think it would have been a little more, turning away, maybe a little fisticuffs, like maybe it would have got violent, but I think there would have been a lot more tension, because Goblin Slayer doesn't look silver rank in the eyes of most people, and I think it's easy to forget those moments. But I really do like even just the simple moments, like prior to the goblin ambush when they're all making camp there, Goblin Slayer just sitting by the fire, and then she comes over. Yeah, we get a little cute moment, of course, with the priestess kind of be like, oh, I'm just getting a drink of water. But it's nice to see her just, because one of the things I really liked in Season 1, it was the promise that Goblin Slayer made to her about how she had these fear of goblins, right? And some of her fears weren't even like, okay, there's goblins over here, can you take care of it? No, she was legitimately having nightmares about goblins, and Goblin Slayer promised to her that even if they're in her dream, that he would be there to stop them. So the idea that she purposely picked him for the mission, even against, the advice like, oh, anyone could do this mission, bodyguard mission, she's like, no, there's only one man I trust. At the end of the day, there is a lot of females who have their eyes on Goblin Slayer, and I think that's always been the case. I mean, it was very clear in season 1 that was going to happen. Of course, Cowgirl is still the one who pretty much is in the driver's seat and is destined to win. I mean, look at who he runs off all cutesy-like to make sure that she knows that he's going to be back safe in a little bit, or the fact that he gives her his reward as a little cute gesture. But at the same time, I like how rather than it just being like, oh, we're in a harem where all these girls are competing, yeah, I mean, Goblin Slayer's a hunk of meat. A lot of people want to bite. Hell, I'm pretty sure Lizard Man wants a bite of his ass at some points, and I can't say I blame him. But at the same time, we have to understand that these characters do still feel like characters first and foremost, and not just the crush that they have on our lead man. Now, like I said, the 3 fights we had were good. The intro one was just really fun and visually creative with the filter. The one at the end with the ambush was kind of like what you associate for a goblin ambush. It was very large. There was a lot of things at play. I think my favorite part was actually prior to the fight starting, because they're all sleeping, right? So the priestess walks over to get her drink. Everything starts hitting the fan. She doesn't really have time to like fully suit up, but she puts the chainmail on because you gotta keep your vital organs safe to the best of your ability. But like I said, the best fight was hands down on the boat. I just like seeing, it was cool because like at one point the serpent comes down, like bites the boat. I thought that thing was flipping. I thought it was gonna bite the boat and just flip that thing and we're gonna be lost at sea. Instead, luckily, we were able to survive that initial attack. We have, Archer up on the mast there. And it was really cool seeing the different moments, like especially because it was hard for her to fire arrows. So at one point she like bites off the tip of her like, I don't know, pine cone arrows, whatever the hell she's doing, in order to adjust for like the wind disturbance and everything. It was just like, it felt like a classic season 1 fight. It was well produced, it was visually creative, and it pushed our characters once again outside their comfort zone. And I think given the fact that there's been a couple of times now that they've been ambushed on rafts in just the middle of like a pretty easy to manage location, throwing them basically in the middle of the ocean going up against krakens. I mean, I was expecting like a giant octopus to pop up too, like, oh, hey bro, do you need any help? And he'd be like, nah, Johnny, I got this. But I mean, the sea serpent was really cool, and I love the fact that Goblin Slayer explains it as a fish. Like, he comes back being like, yeah, I didn't kill no goblins. I killed something, it was just a big fish. Like, you're underselling the danger that you went through, my boy, but that's Goblin Slayer for you. But of course, those are my feelings. Let me know what you thought of this week's Goblin Slayer episode down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload more videos to the channel. And like I mentioned, we had that full live reaction over on my Patreon. Hey, while you're there, you also get a video shout out. So today we have Sleepy Ninja, Rin, Miku Miku 39, Shadow Step 02, Hasmin Safo, June Liu, Jessica L. Compton, and Order Lost. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care. Have a good one.